When your only son locks you away to steal your life, what do? Cry or rise? This is the story of Helen, a 72-year-old woman who gave everything to her son, only to discover betrayal hiding behind polished smiles. But this time, the ending belongs to her. Subscribe now and watch till the end, because revenge has no expiration date. I still remember the sound of the lock turning from the outside. Click. It echoed like a death sentence. My knees hit the dusty wooden floor of the old country house as I watched my phone shatter against the boards. My only lifeline, gone. "You're not leaving this house unless it's in a coffin," my son snarled. That was Daniel, the boy I raised alone. The man I sacrificed my youth for. And now, the man who had just trapped me like an animal so he could sail away on a luxury cruise with his glamorous wife Sabrina and her scheming mother. As the silence settled, a thought burned through the fear. How did I end up here? For decades, my life was Daniel. I started working as a seamstress at 18, stitching dresses in a cramped textile factory. My hands were rough, but they held our world together after my husband vanished when Daniel was just 8. Every dollar I earned went into his shoes, his education, his dreams. When other women bought jewelry, I bought Daniel new sneakers so he wouldn't be mocked at school. When others went on vacations, I worked double shifts to buy him a motorcycle at 16. And when he was ready for college, I mortgaged my small house to fund his engineering degree. I expected nothing in return, just love, respect, a Sunday dinner now and then. For a while, I got it. Daniel graduated top of his class, landed a great job, and took me to dinner every week. He hugged me. He called me Mama. Then Sabrina appeared. She was beautiful in a magazine cover way, tall, always perfectly styled, and carrying the air of someone who believed the world existed to orbit her. From the first handshake, she looked at me as if I were a worn-out prop in her future husband's story. I tried to be warm. I cooked her favorite dishes. I bought her gifts I couldn't afford. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile people give waitresses when the food arrives late. 2 years later, the wedding was held in a 20,000 hall. She planned every detail, erasing me from the process like chalk from a board. I sat in the front row in a discounted green dress, invisible, while Daniel promised forever to the woman who would turn him against me. That night, as I cleaned dishes from my own small family gathering, I overheard Sabrina in the garden with her mother. "Now that we're married, we set boundaries. Daniel's too soft with his mother. She thinks she can control him, but those days are over." Her mother laughed. "Men need their wives to open their eyes." I froze behind the window, the plate still dripping in my hands. It wasn't paranoia, it was a plan. The months after the wedding were like watching a slow erosion. Sunday visits became rare. Daniel's laughter grew forced. Conversations were clipped, always interrupted by Sabrina's reminders about their elite dinners and future plans. The first open wound came over chicken stew. I'd cooked his childhood favorite, hoping to catch a glimpse of the boy I loved. But he arrived alone, cold and distant. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Sabrina and we think it's better if we have some space. You rely on me too much." "Space?" My voice shook. "You visit once a week. That's the problem," he snapped. "I'm 30. I can't be responsible for your happiness." Each word was a knife. The boy who once clung to me after nightmares now treated me like a weight chained to his ankle. The decline accelerated. Visits dropped to every few weeks. Sabrina mocked my home's old charm in front of me, hinting at better neighborhoods while sipping my expensive coffee like it was tap water. Then came the 5,000. "Mom," Daniel said one afternoon, "Sabrina needs a new car. It's just a loan." 3 months, I promise. It was nearly all my savings, my emergency fund for medical needs. But I gave it to him, like I always had. He never paid it back. Months later, I fell seriously ill with the flu. High fever, cough that rattled my chest. I called Daniel, terrified. "Mom, I can't," he said. We've got a meeting with the kitchen architect. Sabrina's waited months for this appointment. Daniel, please, I whispered. I just need someone here, for a few hours. Can't you call a neighbor? He replied, annoyed. Sabrina says adults should take care of themselves. He hung up. I lay in bed for days, delirious, shaking with fever. My phone never rang. My son never called. It was my neighbor Martha, a widow in her 70s, who brought soup, medicine, and humanity. Helena, she said gently, tucking the sheets around me, it's not normal for a son to abandon his sick mother. I recovered. My phone stayed silent. Something inside me hardened. The woman who begged for scraps of attention died in that sickbed. So when Daniel called weeks later, Mom, can you make Sabrina's favorite lasagna for her parents? I said no. The stunned silence on the line was almost satisfying. From that day, I began to live differently. I joined Martha for walks. I planted flowers. I read books I had forgotten I owned. I was no longer his emergency cook, banker, or emotional servant. Daniel noticed, and he didn't like it. 3 weeks later, he showed up at my door with Sabrina, uninvited. We need to talk, he barked, storming in like a landlord. They accused me of bad-mouthing them because neighbors had repeated what I told Martha, the truth, that my son had abandoned me when I was sick. Sabrina sneered. You're 72, Helen. It's time you stop acting like a spoiled teenager seeking attention. Daniel said nothing. He just looked at his shoes. That silence, it was worse than her words. Something in me cracked. For decades, I had loved him fiercely. But standing there, seeing him let his wife insult me in my own home, I realized the boy I raised was gone. I walked to the cabinet, pulled out my will, and held it up. Daniel had always assumed he'd inherit everything, the house, the savings. You're right, I told him coldly. All those sacrifices were my decisions. But this will, that's my decision too, and I fed it, page by page, into the shredder. Their faces turned white as the paper turned to confetti. Daniel lunged for me. What are you doing? I'm making a new decision, I said, voice steady. I'm done giving everything to someone who gives me nothing. That was the night he snatched the phone, slammed it to the floor, and destroyed it. You have no one, he hissed. You're completely at our mercy. He thought he broke me. He didn't know I'd already started recording. He didn't know I had a second phone. And he didn't know he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. I waited until Daniel and Sabrina's car disappeared down the dark road. Then, with steady hands, I lifted my mattress and pulled out a small cell phone I'd bought in secret months earlier. I dialed Martha. Martha, it's me. Come over. It's time. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in my living room staring at the shattered remains of the house phone. Helen, this is serious, she whispered. He threatened you. We need to call the police. Not yet, I said, calmly pouring her tea. Not yet? Her brows furrowed. This is intimidation. I nodded. Exactly. Which is why I'm going to handle this on my terms. They think I'm weak. They think they've broken me. Tomorrow, they're expecting me to go along like a scared old woman. I'm going to give them the performance of their lives. She watched me silently as I laid out the plan I had been crafting in pieces ever since Sabrina began her quiet takeover. At first, Martha tried to talk me out of it. It's dangerous, she said. But the more she listened, the more her eyes hardened with the same quiet fury I carried. The next morning, just after sunrise, I called my lawyer, Mr. Walters. I need urgent changes to my will, I said. He arrived within hours. Sitting across from me at the kitchen table, he flipped through my instructions with raised eyebrows. These are significant changes, Mrs. Therjacus. Helen, he said. I'm aware, I replied, signing each page deliberately. And I want it documented that I'm doing this of my own free will, fully aware and uncoerced. By 10 a.m., everything was legally filed. The house, the savings, everything was redirected to a foundation for single mothers. Every page notarized, every step recorded. Minutes later, Daniel's car pulled into the driveway, right on schedule. Martha was hidden in the kitchen, phone recording. My spare phone was tucked into the couch cushions, capturing everything. I opened the door before they knocked, wearing an expression of resignation. My voice was soft, defeated. "Good morning. I've been expecting you." Daniel walked in with the swagger of a man convinced he'd won. Sabrina's perfume filled the air like poison. "I hope you've had time to think," he said smugly. "Yes," I murmured, eyes lowered. "I've made the new will. The lawyer came this morning." Their eyes lit up like slot machines hitting 777s. "Excellent," Sabrina said, dropping onto the sofa like she owned it. I handed them a fake copy I had prepared. It named Daniel as the sole heir. Sabrina's grin stretched wide as she scanned the lines. She tucked the paper into her purse like a trophy. "Now that that's settled," she said, "we should discuss some practical matters." Daniel leaned back in the armchair, the same chair where he once curled into my lap as a child. "Mom, now that the house will be ours, we think it's best for you to move somewhere more appropriate for your age." My fingers curled into fists behind my back. "Appropriate for my age?" "Yes," he said with patronizing patience. "A retirement home. Somewhere with 24-hour medical staff." Sabrina found a great one outside the city. Sabrina nodded eagerly. "It's beautiful. You'll be with people your age. No more worrying about maintaining this big old house." "It's for your own good." "For my own good," I repeated quietly. They went on, describing their plans like two vultures dividing a carcass. They wanted to sell the house I built stitch by stitch, dollar by dollar, for nearly $400,000. With my $100,000 in savings, they'd have $500,000 to fund their dream home. "And where do I fit in these dreams?" I asked softly. Sabrina didn't even blink. "You'll be perfectly cared for at the home. What more could you want? Respect, gratitude, love." "But I didn't say that." "Not yet. We could take you to see it tomorrow," Daniel added cheerfully. "The sooner the better. It's like ripping off a bandage." Ripping off a bandage. That was how my son described uprooting me from my life. "Tomorrow?" I echoed. "Yes," he said firmly. I let a beat of silence stretch, pretending to process their cruelty. In truth, I was savoring every second. "You're right," I said finally, nodding slowly. "It's time I accept reality." They both relaxed, thinking I'd surrendered. "Good," Daniel said, standing. "This is for the best." "Yes," I whispered, "for the best." I led them toward the basement door. "Before tomorrow, there's something I want to show you. Something from your grandfather. A keepsake. I thought you might like to have it." Their curiosity overrode their suspicion. They followed me down the creaking wooden stairs. The basement was dim, shadows stretching across the walls. I flipped the main light on. Their faces froze. The walls were covered. Photos. Bank records. Transcripts. Every act of cruelty, every unpaid loan, every insult they thought I didn't hear, meticulously documented. Daniel stepped closer, pale. "Mom, what is this?" "This," I said calmly, "is my archive. Evidence. Months of it. There were photos of the bruises on my arm from the time he shoved me, copies of his messages about my money. Audio transcripts of their conversations mocking me behind closed doors. "This is illegal," Sabrina shrieked. "No," I corrected her evenly. "In my own home, I can record conversations. And documenting emotional and financial abuse is not illegal. It's survival." She rifled through the papers, her hands trembling as she read her own text messages, laughing with friends about the old woman's house. And then Daniel noticed the laptop on the central table. "What's that?" he asked. "Oh, that," I said, smiling. "That's my life insurance." On the screen was a live video call. 4 faces stared back. Mr. Empey. Walters, a social worker, Martha in the kitchen, and Michael, my neighbor, an investigative journalist. For the past 20 minutes, everything that happened upstairs and now in this basement had been broadcast live. Recorded. Backed up. Sabrina lunged for the laptop, but I closed it before she reached it. "Too late," I said. Everything's already saved in multiple places. Your plans, your threats, your greed. All of it. Daniel sank into an old chair, staring at the walls like a man watching his world collapse. Mom, what have you done? What I should have done months ago, I replied. I pointed to another section of the wall. Here are all the loans you called family help. $47,000. Every promise to repay, every excuse afterward. He swallowed hard. Those weren't loans. They were, I snapped. I have your words, Daniel. Your exact words. Sabrina found the legal documents pinned to a corkboard. Her voice cracked. You changed the will. Yes, I said. The fake one you read upstairs? That was for show. This is the real one. Everything goes to a foundation for single mothers. Not a cent to either of you. Daniel grabbed the document and scanned it in disbelief. You can't do this. I already did. Panic flickered across Sabrina's face. We'll contest it. We'll prove you're not in your right mind. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. Go ahead. Explain to a judge why a woman who documented months of abuse isn't capable of deciding who inherits her money. Explain the recordings, the threats, the smashed phone, the retirement home plans. Silence. They finally understood. The game was over. The knock on the door came at exactly 3 p.m, punctual as a gavel. 2 officers stood on my porch, sunlight flashing across brass nameplates. Behind me, Daniel and Sabrina were statues, all the arrogance drained from their faces and replaced with the hangdog panic of people who finally understand there are consequences. Ma'am, the taller officer said, hat tucked beneath his arm, we received a report. Are you safe? I looked from the shattered landline to my son's clenched jaw and back to the officers. I am now. They stepped inside, professionalism wrapped in quiet concern. I told them what happened, how my son seized my phone, how he smashed it, how he threatened me. Martha corroborated every detail, voice steady, hands folded like a church elder. When they asked for evidence, I handed them a thumb drive and my spare phone. Recordings, I said. And photos. And messages. It's all there. Sabrina stiffened. This is a family disagreement, she cut in, smoothing hair that no longer sat just so. A misunderstanding. The officer met her eyes evenly. Ma'am, intimidation and destruction of property are not misunderstandings. He turned to Daniel. Sir, did you break your mother's phone? Daniel's eyes flicked to me, the way they did when he was 5 and wanted to read my face before telling a half-truth. It slipped. On the wall? The officer asked mildly. Silence. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes sang a cool, precise tune. Somewhere, a dog barked twice and then decided it wasn't his business. Mrs. Business. Helen, the shorter officer said, pen poised above his notebook. Do you want to press formal charges? My heart did a strange thing, twinged, then quieted. I studied my son, the set of his shoulders, the boy I used to carry asleep from the car. And then I remembered his voice in my kitchen. You're not leaving this house unless it's in a coffin. That was the sound of a door closing from the outside. This was me, unlocking it from within. Yes, I said. I do. What followed moved with the relentless logic of a tide. Statements. Photos. The receipts that weren't for groceries, but for the 1,000 small ways I financed their lives, just this once, Mom. The officers took everything. Before leaving, they handed me a case number and a list of resources for victims of elder abuse. You did the right thing, one said. When the door clicked shut, the house exhaled. Sabrina turned to Daniel, the first crack of anger splitting through panic. I told you not to break the phone, she hissed, a whisper knife. Now there's proof. Proof has been a theme today, I said, sliding the laptop back open. The call reconnected itself, Mr. Walters, the social worker, Martha's calm profile from the kitchen, and Michael, my neighbor, the reporter with a talent for asking questions that detonate softly and leave holes you only notice when the light pours through. Everyone had witnessed enough. I gave them a small nod. Thank you. We'll speak soon. Sabrina tried to recover her poise. There's an easy way to fix this, Helen. Withdraw the charges. Restore the will. We'll forget today happened. I won't, I said. Think, Daniel growled, stepping forward as if anger could reach back in time and unspool the hour. Your name. Your reputation. People will talk. People already talk, I said. And yet, here I am, still me, which is more than I can say for you. They left soon after because there was nothing else for them to do in a house where the story no longer obeyed their choreography. The door closed on Sabrina's perfume and Daniel's silence, and the air felt clean in the way a room does after a window is opened. That evening, Michael knocked, not as a neighbor this time, but as a journalist with a draft. We sat at my kitchen table under the old brass light that made coffee gleam like a good secret. He spoke with the compassion of someone who'd seen this pattern before and the precision of someone who refused to get it wrong. I'll change names if you prefer, he offered, pen hovering. I don't, I said. And I didn't. I had hidden the truth long enough to make it polite for everyone but me. The story ran 1 week later with photographs of my hands, not the bruises but the calluses where the needle pressed for decades. The headline cut straight through the niceties: when love is leveraged, a mother's documented fight against elder abuse. The article didn't sensationalize, it anatomized. The calls, the loans, the plans to put me somewhere appropriate. It let my recordings speak in their own voices, Sabrina's cooing contempt, Daniel's tired impatience, the language of people who believe they will never be held to account. The response came like weather: first murmurs, then wind, then a storm of sympathy and anger. Women brought zucchini bread to my porch and sat on the steps with stories. A retired teacher pressed an envelope into my hand at the grocery store and whispered, "For whatever you need." At church, an usher I barely knew stopped me under the stained glass and said, "My son did something like this to my sister. Thank you for showing how to push back." Within days, Mr. Masher. Walters called. Their lawyers blinked. It turned out contesting the will would require explaining the recordings to a judge. The idea that an old woman had learned to use small cameras and encryption seemed to offend Sabrina on the deepest possible level. It's not how the script goes, Michael said dryly, the one time he allowed himself to be unprofessional in my kitchen. As for Daniel, the consequences came with the merciless speed of a corporate email. First, a meeting with HR. Then a voluntary leave. Then not voluntary at all. His firm had clients who read newspapers and did not want their buildings associated with headlines about cruelty. Sabrina's clinic, where finesse and empathy were part of the brand, parted ways with her under a phrase that managed to be both gentle and terminal, not aligned with our values. Losing status is its own sort of winter. They tried to warm themselves at the old fire this time with apologies. Texts arrived like rain. "Can we talk? I wasn't myself. You know I love you." We were stressed. The messages alternated between the vocabulary of remorse and the grammar of blame. I did not answer. There is a kind of quiet that is not unkindness. It is boundary. 3 months later, the bell rang. I opened the door to find Daniel alone, thinner, eyes shadowed with sleep he hadn't earned. The boy in his face tugged at me for one breath. Then I remembered how easily that boy weaponized pity. "Mom," he said, voice splintered. "Please." I didn't move. He filled the silence. "I lost everything," he went on, the words falling out jagged. "My job, the house." Sabrina left. He swallowed. "I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air like a coat on a hook that would never fit my shoulders again. "I'm not a judge," I said softly. "But I am a witness, and I was there." For months, for years. He reached for the oldest script. "I'm your son." I shook my head. My son would not threaten me in my own kitchen. My son would not plan where to store me like old furniture. My son would have taken me to the doctor when I had a fever. "I can change," he said, and for once the words didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded like a person hearing himself for the first time. "I hope you do," I said. "But not for me, for you. I've retired from the job of saving you from yourself. He was quiet a long time, and the silence wasn't a power play anymore. It was grief. He nodded, eyes wet. Okay? I held the door, not wide, not cruel. I wish you well, Daniel. The door closed easily. There was nothing in the way. That night, the house felt different. Not just safer, but truer. Like a photograph developing in a pan of solution, the image finally resolving after years of blur. I cooked for one and set a second plate across the table on a whim, then laughed and put it back in the cabinet. Even the laugh sounded new in my mouth. Martha came by with her cardigan unbuttoned and a tin of shortbread. She sat, looked around like a foreman inspecting a repaired beam, and finally nodded. Solid, she said. Solid, I agreed. We drank tea and talked about ordinary things. Tomatoes that refused to ripen in the shade. A book about a woman who starts walking every morning and accidentally finds a life. How the neighbor's dog chooses a different fence post every day as if curating a museum. Small talk gets a bad reputation. Done right, it is stitching, one point in front of the other until cloth becomes something that can hold. In the weeks that followed, days found a rhythm that didn't depend on anyone else's permission. I volunteered at the food pantry twice a week and discovered I was very good at organizing cans into clever pyramids that made children point and say, wow. I joined a reading circle at the library and confessed, in week 3, that I'd never read the book club pick because I was too busy reading the blurbs. We laughed until we cried and decided the next month would be Short Things We Love. The foundation paperwork arrived for my signature official language wrapped around a simple idea: help single mothers who are stitching lives from scraps. I wrote a note to include with the first grant, use this for sneakers, or a bicycle, or a class. Use it for the small thing that becomes a big thing when someone believes in you. I signed my name, each letter like a door opening. Sometimes at night, I stand at the kitchen window and watch the porch light throw a gentle ring onto the steps. It looks like a stage. I used to think the house was waiting for the next person to enter, next scene, next voice. Now I know it was waiting for me. If you're reading this because someone shared the article with you, because the piece whispered, "This is your story too," then hear me clearly. It is never too late to pick up the needle. It is never too late to document the truth, to call the people who will stand beside you when the lock clicks, to choose dignity over a role that hurts you. People will say you're being dramatic. People will say it's just a misunderstanding. People will say family, as if it were an absolution instead of a responsibility. Look at their actions. Make your own decisions. One afternoon, I passed a boutique window advertising a linen dress in a green so soft it looked like later spring. I went in and tried it on. The clerk adjusted the shoulder and stepped back. "You look like the person the younger you was aiming at," she said. "I think I do," I answered. I wore that dress to the pantry the following week, and a little girl in a blue t-shirt asked if I was a teacher. Of something, I told her, and showed her how to stack the soup so the labels made a long red ribbon. She did it perfectly, and grinned so hard I thought her cheeks would lift her right off the floor. Toward evening, a summer storm rolled in, the sort that remodels light into something that makes the world look freshly washed. I stood on the porch and breathed the scent of wet dust. The wind chimes started up, bright, unruly, honest. For a moment, I remembered the basement walls and the weight of paper and all the ways proof can be made to sing. I went inside, flipped on the kettle, and whispered to the quiet house, "We did it. We did." If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs strength tonight. And if you want more true, soul-deep stories where elders rise, reclaim dignity, and write their own endings, subscribe, like, and stay with us. Your support helps these voices be heard, and it tells the world, loudly, that revenge done with courage and truth has no expiration date.